There you go. And that'll make me go away.
You can leave.
All right.
Thank you for coming on and setting it up. Well, greetings, everyone. This is the Parking Commission meeting of the town of New Canaan. It's 7:30. My name is Keith Ritchie, and composing a quorum, we have from left to right on my screen, Pamela Crum, Peter Ogilvie, and Laura Budd. And we also have Stacy, who I ought to rename, representing the parking department. And I see Robert Mantilla and Adam Shushan. So let us.
Plus Stacy.
Yes.
Are you going to rename her iPhone?
Yeah, but first I'm going to share our agenda. So again, we have Zoom meetings which will apply. This is all an effort for us to avoid being exposed to COVID-19. And so thank you all for participating. We have 5 appeals to hear. We're seeing, at least on my Zoom, and I see, by the way, welcome to Chris Herring. So now that gives us a full complement of Parking Commission members. And let's start with the first appeal. And Adam, since you were on first, even though it's a little bit out of order, let's do yours. And I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And your appeal was B003. So let me, and everyone else may want to pull up that material.
Yep.
Let's see. Okay. So, Adam, why don't you tell us what happened?
Sure. So my wife came home, parked. I don't know if you have the pictures I took,
Yeah.
but we had been told before to be 10 feet back from the fire hydrant. So if you look at the street, you can see this little blue paint on a circle, which is just about 10 feet from the fire hydrant, and we were using that as a marker. So you can see the cars clearly parked behind that. I think the ticket was written at 11:54. I came out of my house at 12:02, so we barely missed them. And my wife had left her windows open. I said, all right, let me close the windows. I noticed the parking ticket. I noticed we're behind the blue mark. So I immediately grabbed a tape measure. We were just, almost 12 feet away from the fire hydrant. So we weren't within the 10 feet. So, I mean, I brought the ticket to the police station. They said, parking bureau. I met with the state, sent her all the information. I mean, we weren't within 10 feet. 2 other things. They've subsequently moved the fire hydrant across the street. So Aquarian, I guess, never should have put it on our sidewalk to begin with. And, you know, basically, I don't think that was even a big deal all year until we got warned, because every mom picking up at Saks twice a day, every day, has parked on that fire hydrant. And we've never seen anyone come by to even, you know, look at them. So, I mean, once we got that warning, we made that road mark in the street. And so, like I said, we weren't within.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I mean, I guess if 10 feet is the guidance and you were 11 feet and whatever back from the fire hydrant, I would say we weren't in violation of the 10-foot area.
What road is this on?
Village, right across from Saks.
Okay.
I actually put up your picture and the police officer's picture to verify that the marker was as you said. I also did a measurement on it. And even if you take from the front of your bumper to where the part sticks out of the fire hydrant, you're still at roughly 10 feet. You're 10 feet or less, so you are within legal location.
I'm
You're
outside.
legal.
Okay, thank
They
you.
probably eyeballed it as opposed to measuring it when they wrote the ticket.
I didn't want to, when I brought it up to them, they seemed a little hesitant, and I said, well, did you take a measurement? And they were like, we measured. And I said, well, could I see it? And they were like, well, you got to appeal it to the parking bureau. So like, Stacy couldn't have been nicer. And, you know, she just said she'll put all the information in and we can discuss it here today. So.
Yeah, so did you, Pam, you said you put up,
I put it, both of them up on my screen and actually measured it. I put them to the same dimensions and measured it. I came up with about 10 feet from the edge of the hydrant to the front bumper of the car, because you're actually measuring underneath. But it still is within, it's close enough to the 10 feet to be legal.
so this is the photo you're speaking of. Is that correct?
No,
Please,
no, that's
no,
not,
that's
not the
that's
police
somebody
photo.
else's.
I believe my understanding is the reason the police went to that location is because they received a complaint that,
Yes, they did, right here.
yep. So that is part of the complaint, the picture that somebody sent to the police department. There is another photo that I sent to you. It says police photo, and that's the actual photo that the police officer took and attached it to her report.
It's in the photo section. It's not in that
In the photo
section.
section.
Okay, hang on. Okay, but go on anyhow. It's gonna take me a second to pull that up.
So that's why they were called. Also, if you read in the police report, the officer put observed approximately 6 feet. I read the report and I didn't actually see that there was an exact measurement. So just that I don't know if there was a measurement taken or if it was just observed, but I'm going by what the report said.
And when I looked at the police picture, at first I wasn't sure if the circle was the front, the circle that's shown by the back part of the tire. However, there is one toward the front that's very hard to see unless you blow it up. I have a large screen, so I can actually blow it up and see
Why
it.
don't you share screen? I'll stop sharing if you have it handy.
Yeah, I have it. What do I do to share it? The
You
picture?
go, take your cursor to the bottom center of the Zoom screen, and there's a green box that'll say share screen.
Okay.
So you take your cursor down to the bottom
Okay.
center. Well, you don't need to look to your left. You look at the
No,
Zoom
but it's
screen.
on my left screen right now. I have two screens.
Oh, that's not going to be helpful.
Yeah, I can bring it over to this screen.
Okay, and you
Can you
need to
see
do that.
now? Okay, let me,
And now, when you hit share screen, you'll be able to choose which image you put up.
okay. Said host disabled participant screen sharing.
I have. Okay, I will enable it. There.
Let's see if we can get it now. Okay, here. All right, if you look, let me make this larger.
Mhm.
Is that the petitioner's house?
Yes.
That's your house.
Come on.
Yeah, but so I dealt with Tiger on this other issue, but when we bought the house, there was no fire hydrant there. When we moved in, Aquarian had dropped a fire hydrant. So post all of this brouhaha with neighbors complaining for the first time in 16 months or whatever, Aquarian came and has now relocated it across the street. So it's not a gigantic ice in the middle of our,
Okay, well, let me get to the
Oh,
other
so this no
one.
longer exists?
they moved it across the street where the neighbor on our opposite side of our street enters his driveway on Farm. He has no driveway on Village. So I just think it was Aquarian laziness that put it there.
Okay, Keith, everyone,
Yeah.
if you can see, here's the rubble on the one that Adam took. Here's the rubble on the police station, police
Yeah.
picture. Here's the disc right here,
Yeah.
which is that one there. This
Right.
one here is back where you can't really see it beyond the top, beyond this car tire.
On Adam's picture.
Yeah,
Okay. So you're saying it's more than 10 feet?
It's
That
at
is
least
what
10,
the-
it's 10 feet minimum away from the hydrant. If you take from this point to his bumper, it's still roughly 10 feet. It's not 6 feet or, anywhere really. It's close enough to 10 feet.
Okay, so then why did the officer give him a ticket?
Probably because she thought that was 10 feet. She
No,
thought
it was-
this was 10 feet.
So
Well, less than 10 feet.
Less than 10 feet, I mean. Sorry.
Pam, there is is that a water faucet or valve?
Yeah, this is a fire hydrant.
Next to his front left tire.
You mean right here?
Underneath the tire?
Right
No,
here.
just that's it, right there.
Yeah, but that's the one back the way here. This one is this one here.
Yeah, there's a
If I
couple of.
blow this one up,
Can I make a motion? So, okay,
Yes.
we can't. Can we, so it seems like we have pretty good data here and we all seem to be on the same page. This is give or take 10 feet. And that the law is 10 feet. And it seems like we have enough knowledge to either vote on whether we agree to uphold this or void it. Does anyone?
If you're moving that we vote now, I'll second that.
no. I agree.
Yeah, I just.
Okay, all in favor of voiding this ticket? Please say aye.
I-
Hold your hand up. Unanimous. Okay, excellent. Adam, good night's work.
Thank you very much.
I will take care of it when I get back to the office.
Stacy, have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you,
Okay,
you too.
Thank you.
Here.
All right, so let us now go back to our,
We had one more participant.
I know, I'm just going back to the agenda. So we've taken care of Adam. And now let me go to our list of participants. Sorry. I'm going to stop sharing. What participants? So is it, who has the iPhone?
It was Brendan who signed on, but I don't
But
see
he's
him now.
off. There is no appellee currently on the call.
Yeah, he was here, but he's gone.
He was here.
It was Brendan Tiani.
Okay, well, let's circle back to the appeals then
Okay.
and give him a minute to come back. We need to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Did anyone have any comment on those minutes?
No.
Any comments?
Nope.
I guess I need to go around. Pam, any comments?
No,
Peter, any comments?
No.
Laura?
Nope.
Chris?
No comment.
Okay, then I move that the minutes for the May meeting be approved. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, great. Minutes approved. Again, I'm going to try and give Brendan a chance to come back in. So I'm going to again share my screen. It's a little cumbersome, so I apologize for that. So let's move then to old matters. And the first old matter is just what was stated in the newspaper, that the Board of Selectmen voted to enforce the meters in the Morse Court, Park Street, and Playhouse meeting lots after August. The Board of Selectmen also voted to commence renewals for annual parking permits on November the 1st. And in that connection, Stacy provided a useful chart, which I'm going to now share. Oh, what's going on here? Stop share, and now I'm going to share again. There. And so this is what the fees would be plus the sales tax on a prorated basis. Is that correct, Stacy?
That is correct.
And
1st through June 30th of 2021.
Yes. And I think one of the questions is, even though the Board of Selectmen have said that we should start charging the permit fees, they didn't say exactly whether or not they would be pro rata or not. So I think that is up to us. We have another meeting between now and then, so we don't have to decide this question now. And I'm going to offer my own comment that I'm not certain that it makes sense to try to conclude on this issue yet, if we have procedurally enough time, and I'll ask Stacy that, because I'm not certain how the world will have unfolded by November the 1st. And I know the Board of Selectmen can always change their mind, but once we send out the notices for renewal and ask for payment, then that's going to be very hard to retract. So let's discuss this. Who has a comment?
Well, I'd like to know how much time Stacy needs with regards to sending out the renewal notices.
Well, I will usually need at least a month and a half. So my thought, because I thought the Board of Selectmen agreed, because they put out notices that the permits were extended until October 31st with the prorated 8-month period starting November 1st. And I know Kevin had put out a press release and everything like that. So I was attempting to get all the permits printed in August and have them mailed out by the first week in September so that we can get everybody renewed by October 31st. I've already had the extension put into our system. They've already updated everybody's permits who expired on the 30th of June, and now it says October 31st. So I really do need to get it smoothly, at least a month and a half to get everything set. 2 months would be wonderful. That's why I was starting in August
Yeah. Now, our next meeting is the beginning
of September.
Right. So in theory, you might have enough time, but are you saying it's not worth waiting until then, that you just want to proceed and we'll just go with, we're going to prorate the parking fees?
It would be very tight if we were going to stay with October 31st as an expiration date to start getting everything printed, getting it to me, getting them in the envelope and out to everybody if we waited till the next meeting. So it would be very tight. I thought it was already agreed upon. And like I said, that's why.
Arguably it was, but you know, this is our scope.
Right.
And I didn't think it was entirely crystal clear what the Board of Selectmen did. And I tend to think that they kind of regard things as well. They can kind of change them.
Okay.
And they may not be so familiar with the procedural requirements of something like this. So I think that's why I thought it was kind of worthy of discussion, because it's one of the critical things that we work on.
Could I do it? I could. I mean, but it would be very tight. And I would just worry that people would not be getting them in on time, and then we would get that whole late fee issue.
The last time I went by the lumberyard lot and paid attention, it didn't seem like there were many cars there.
I don't, well, we're not even going out there right now. I don't have anybody patrolling it because there's no reason to. So, but I know a couple of times it was mentioned that they're empty. The lots
Chris,
are empty.
I know you're leaving from the, usually the Talmadge Hill lot, right? Or are you even taking the train these days?
Oh, no, I mean, my office in New York's been closed since March 12th, and we're not even allowed to go into New York City. So, you know, the only times I've gone by Talmadge Hill is when I run by it. And I've rarely seen more than 5 cars there. In fact, they they repaved 2 of the tiers there, and they haven't even repainted them yet. I mean, no rush on it because there's no one parking there. But yeah, it doesn't seem very, returning to our previous commuting model doesn't seem very imminent. I would be surprised if it even becomes a normal thing before January, or potentially before 2022.
Or put another way, before they have a vaccine.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I think this is all rather, I don't know.
Yeah, I think they made a decision too early, and I guess before we take action, I guess I would be willing to take it on myself to go back and say, do you want another bite of the apple, and put this back by another month or two, because we are seeing a second resurgence. The concern level hasn't dropped. There's still no vaccine.
I mean, I think from a revenue perspective, I would say that if we send them out early, I would argue that we're going to get a very low yield. And so I would argue that deferring them to maybe, say January, just for sake of argument, we'd probably have more people re-up on them for that 6-month period versus an 8-month period. Because I think a lot of people, especially with the daily boxcar, and the fact that a lot of, well, I work with a lot of companies, and a lot of them are saying that, we're discussing the idea of people going to the office alternate days and other sorts of scenario that just wouldn't get a person to New York City 5 days a week. So the idea of having a permit where the benefit of having a 5-day permit over a 2-day boxcar, et cetera, it just becomes, the economic equation is just not as strong anymore.
Yeah, in that connection, I spoke to Kevin Monahan, and he mentioned, this is, I think, Tuesday night, that people were still paying to park in St. A's. So that, in other words, they didn't have, these are the people who don't have a permit, but for some reason we still wanted to take the train. So they were paying to park in St. A's, not taking advantage of the fact that the parking in the lumberyard lot is not being enforced. So I guess there must be some people who are still commuting. But I had, several weeks ago heard ridership was down 90%.
And
Yeah,
the retail lots are starting to fill up.
Yeah, it's a totally different thing. We're talking about the retail lots.
Center School and Morris
Fortunately,
Court.
Peter, I think the retail lots are filling up with the employees who we're trying to keep off the streets so that we can keep the restaurants and the shops, the parking available for the people coming in to shop and go to the restaurants. Unfortunately, I think that's what we're seeing in the lots.
That may be, but they're certainly filling up.
Absolutely. And Main and Elmore, there's a lot of parking going on. Laura, how's it looking on the retail side?
I think town is very busy. We see a lot of people coming and going. There are 64 spots now on Elm Street, and we just sent a blistering letter out to the stores just to tell their employees there's just no excuse for any employee to be on the street. And it's baffling that some of them still park on the street. But I mean, the other day at 1:30, the Morris Court lot was full. The movie theater parking lot's usually about 75% full. But the Park Street lot, I would say, is never more than 50%. It's probably closer to 30% full on any given day. But Morris Court is definitely busy. And I don't know about Center School, what's going on there.
I don't think Center is filling up, but Mike did say that Morris Court was very busy.
Yeah.
The other day.
The Center looks like it's about 50%.
Well,
Yeah.
Center also has
I thought.
construction employees from the Merritt Village construction. So
Yeah.
there are probably about 20 or 30 cars just from those construction resources.
Yeah, so going back to the agenda, so again, the Board of Selectmen voted to enforce the meters in the Morris Court, Park Street, and Playhouse parking lots. It's interesting, they didn't mention the center lot or the telephone lot or the locust lot. So and they also didn't mention about the permits in those lots. So they're rather kind of a hodgepodge of action. And again, the renewals for the annual parking permits, which again, I would normally think it would be the commuter lots, but certainly there's permits also in the center lot. And now we have a few in Morse Court and a few elsewhere. I think we need to get back with the Board of Selectmen and say, you need a more refined view. And so I'm going to move that I take an action to sort of write out a plan, and then I'll send around to all the parking commission members. And so that we can, instead of just saying, we think what you did is dumb, we can say, here's what we suggest that you do, and please ratify it. Go ahead.
I just had two thoughts with regards to the commuter parking ones at least. And that is, I'm wondering if the Board of Selectmen were counting on the financial aspect as far as the parking fees and the balance of the budget, which is something we need to know. Secondly is, I think some people will sign up, as did part-time commuters who maybe went into the city 3 or 4 times but didn't want to lose their permit. So it may be a consideration from that standpoint, as well as, depending upon when we start, they may be looking at us just wanting to hold up their space. So it's a consideration.
Yes, Laura?
I think maybe we should try to tie or link our, when we put the permits back in place, when we know the governor, and we need more time, but the governor suspended the phase 3 this week. And I think that's really when life goes back to more normal. Now, sometimes that it's too short a time window to know, but if you're going to approach them and ask them to rethink, we should say maybe it's better to be synced up with phase 3. I know that's not logistically optimal, but
I think though, when it comes to commuters, that phase 3 here doesn't matter as much as what's going on in New York City.
Well, that's true too.
And that's a determinant right there, because as to
Right.
when, because I know there's a push in the city that they're trying to get people back into offices and actually doing it where they have different start times, and they're making a number of changes trying to get people back into the city. I was hearing
Right.
about it today on the news.
I was
Yeah.
thinking
Read
more
article
along
about
the lines of our commercial lots as well. Do we need to have that August, date to start charging? Is that firm, or, should it be more in line with when things get more back to normal?
Yeah, there's that question. And then if you're going to have it, shouldn't you also have that same rule for the center lot and the locust lot? So again, I think we need to, and I'm sorry, I'm taking notes over here. I think we need to tell them that their action was a little premature and that it was incomplete, and ask them maybe to reconsider the timing. And I'll make that a motion that we do that. Do I have any seconds? I have a second from Laura. All in favor of, again, I will draft some sort of communication. I'll copy the draft to everyone, get your input, and then we'll go from there. Is that all okay?
Yeah. So
Chris, go ahead.
I was just going to add, is there clarity on what's in our remit versus what's in their remit? It seems rather unclear to me, like the various decisions on permits and parking enforcement, non-enforcement, and it seems to be, I know that we're in somewhat of an emergency state, but it seems to me that I'm finding out things in the newspaper that I would think that we would find out ahead of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. That the Board of Selectmen has taken.
That's
things
certainly
on.
the case.
Yeah. You know,
Keith, I think we ought to consider the alternative motion, which is to go ahead with a selectman's recommendation.
okay, so.
Since
is
you
that
haven't
what
taken a
you're-
vote, you haven't taken a vote on your motion.
No, I haven't.
You've simply assumed that everyone was in agreement. I think you ought to at least consider an alternative, which is the selectman's proposal.
And again, my response is the selections proposal ignored the existence of the center lot, the locust lot, the telephone lot. It only mentioned meters in those lots. It didn't mention the permits in those lots. So I just think
Well,
it was.
Keith,
Oh.
I'm sorry, I might have interpreted what the Board of Selectmen said differently. I thought it was my understanding when they voted on it, again, to extend the permit year to October 31st and then give a prorated permit. And that included all the permits, commuters and businesses.
Right.
And then it was my understanding again that the lots would be free until August 31st. Streets would be patrolled. And then starting September 1st, we would go back to the way things were, meaning the lots, we would start paying in the lots. Anybody who had permits would be allowed to park there. We would know that they weren't expired yet, and just go back to patrolling that the way we did before as of September 1st in the lots. And I thought it included all the lots, Central, Locust.
Okay, maybe the headline in the newspaper was just incomplete, the story.
Yeah, I thought the Board of Selectmen meant all the pay lots. And then starting September 1st, that's when payments would resume in those lots.
Right.
And we would go back to patrolling for permits in those lots as well, starting September 1st and going into all the lots, commuter lots and everything. We would kind of be up and running, you know, not back to normal, but kind of be running like we had in the past, the new normal, I guess.
Okay.
That was my understanding.
All right, and so actually we don't, if in terms of enforcing the meters, and we assume it's all the metered lots, and then, but that also would include if you have a permit to park in that lot, your permit's been extended. So
Right, to the 31st, yep.
So we don't need to take any action at all for that because, you know, your direction basically is start enforcing after August.
Correct.
You know, I still think there's this question about commencing renewals on November the 1st. We have time to go back and forth between the Board of Selectmen and say, you know, do you really want to make that decision now, or can we kind of hold that off? Because it looked like things were going at a certain pace, and it has not gone that pace. I think most people would say it's slower. Yes, Pat?
Stacy, have you heard anything as to what other towns are doing?
Not in particular. I know there was a form that we had filled out, probably about a month ago. Somebody from Norwalk was doing a survey of all the surrounding towns. And some of the towns were not even extending their permits. They were just renewing it. At that point, payments were still suspended in the lots. But as far as people going back now, no, I do not know what the surrounding towns are doing as of right now. I think everybody is kind of a little bit, you know, watching everybody else and seeing what they're doing. So, but I know some of the towns were not even extending their permits. They were renewing it just like they always were.
Thank you.
I mean, I could absolutely, if you want, start calling around and checking, and I can give you updates on some of the, the towns that are affected as well and see what they're doing. I have no problem doing that.
So that would be nice to know. I don't, we wouldn't want to be out ahead a couple of
Sure.
Our local towns, especially like Darien and Norwalk, Greenwich.
I'll start making some calls. I will say though that we have a lot of new residents moving into town because I am being contacted by people who are looking for permits. So I'm explaining the situation, and a lot of them are saying too that they're looking to get a permit, but they are not commuting anytime soon themselves. So I'm hearing, like Chris says, that a lot of people are not going back commuting anytime soon. So, if that helps to make a decision to extend the permits even longer.
Well, again, it's going to be Board of Selectmen's decision. I'm just thinking,
Right.
because we have time on that one, do we kind of go back to them? Maybe Stacy, you talk to Kevin or something about, we have a concern that it may be too soon to start to start charging for the permits, that will lose too many. Many permit holders will just say, hey, I won't re-up, and that's going to cause problems.
Okay.
And we could just do that, informally. That's the, it came up at the parking committee, and I can certainly do it informally with Kevin. That I think it's just a little too soon. I don't mind about enforcing the meters. That's fine. But I'm really worried about the commuter parking permits. Yes, Pam.
How many people do we still have on the waiting list?
Well, again, Talmadge doesn't have,
But railroad, lumberyard.
if I recall, about 370 something, 372, in and around that. So.
Pam, is your point that we could go ahead and do what they're suggesting, and then we'll provide an opportunity for that waiting list to kind of get reshuffled? Because people will drop out. People otherwise who might have held on to a permit will drop out.
Well, in essence, when we raised the amount so much, we raised it $378, I think, years ago. It basically pushed out some of the part-time people, the ones that went in occasionally, and made room for people who were going to possibly be full-time.
Here's the fear I have with something like that, because we have our reinstatement program,
Right.
where if somebody doesn't need a permit, we encourage them to give it up, but then we don't penalize them if they need it further down the line. My fear with the lumberyard is if people don't renew, because right now they're not commuting and they don't see themselves commuting maybe for 6 months, a year, but after that year, they need to start commuting and we're moving down on the wait lists. We run into that problem of what happens now with the reinstatements that need to,
Well,
that's
customarily,
my fear. And I shouldn't, we shouldn't maybe base that on that, but that's what I see down the line, because this is not a normal situation. And maybe in a year or two, when we get a vaccine or medication or whatever we need to control this, that people will start going back and commuting again. And now they want their permits back.
and normally in a situation like that, don't they move to basically the top of the list?
Yes.
When there's availability.
Yes.
So they can get it back at some point, but
But
essence,
yeah,
what happened
those-
with part-time, people that were part-time before, they were paying for a permit. I mean, we were part-timers and we paid for a permit when we went in maybe twice a month.
Right, and
Just to
that's how
keep a
we would
permit.
manage it. We would manage and look at the lots, how many empty spaces on a daily basis. But if we're now looking and we're saying, okay, now these part-time people are going back and we have 50 spaces, let's make 50 calls on the wait list. And now these part-timers now in a year or so are finding that they're commuting more into Manhattan and they become now again full-timers. that and they need their full-time permit back, then, you know, we could run into a little bit of a situation. So we have to manage it a little
Okay,
closer.
so this discussion's gotten a little bit out of hand. So I
Yes,
think what we're coming out with is on the meters, enforce exactly as Board of Selectmen said. For the permits, Stacy, if you wouldn't mind waiting until
Sure,
1st of
absolutely.
August to take any action on that.
absolutely.
And
no
over
problem.
the next few weeks, let's you and I try to talk to Kevin either together or separately,
Okay,
and just to make sure that he really wants that date.
okay.
That it could be a mistake. Okay, and just kind of sensitize them to the issues a little bit more. All right, so let's move on. And in fact, let's move on by moving back to the appeals and kind of knock those off if we can. So I am going to pull up the agenda again, which has our list of appeals. And is there anyone who wants to discuss any of these appeals in detail besides the one we've already covered, number 4? Assuming not, then I would,
Did anyone circulate the actual appeal document? I don't think I got it.
oh, yeah, they went around.
No.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, there were photos that went around and a long doc attachment.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll go back and search. I just had a series of emails, so.
Yeah. There didn't seem, in my judgment, to be anything that was controversial.
No.
So I would move then that we would continue our normal practice of upholding these appeals for which the appellant has not shown up and there's no other outward reason to suggest a different result. So I'll make that motion to uphold these tickets. That's numbers 1, 2, 3, and 5.
Yep.
Do I have a second? Okay.
Yes.
And do I have what's the vote? All in favor? Put up your hand, please, so we can see it. Okay, I see 4, 5. I don't see Chris. What's happened to my thing? Maybe if I stop here.
For the appeals, I feel a
You
little,
want to abstain?
I'll abstain.
Okay, fine. So it's 4-0. CH abstain. That's fine. Okay, so good. I can close some of that other material now. That. Sorry. So now let's move on. The next item on our agenda is an update on repaving, which I don't have. Stacy, do you?
No, I have no update on that either. I have
Chris,
no idea what's going on.
Chris, you mentioned that they had not done the repaving at the Talmadge Hill.
No, I'm sorry. What I said was they had repaved a series of tiers at Talmadge Hill, but they hadn't restriped them. So this had to have been a month and a half ago. The state was redoing Talmadge Hill Road from 106 up to and beyond Lapham Road. And I think when the contractor was there, Tiger and team were able to negotiate a favorable policy, a favorable contract to repave the tier that is 2 of the tiers going up the hill. So there are 5 tiers going up the hill, and they repaved the lower 2.
Yeah, I guess they're taking advantage of the low usage to pick their time on the painting.
Yeah, I did ask him whether because that's parking permit funds, and then he said that the sidewalk was also pending for both Richmond Hill as well as Talmadge Hill.
Okay. Good. So let me go back to the agenda. I don't know if you have it up, so I will share the screen to bring it up one more time. Let's have this discussion about the pay by phone. At the last meeting, we unanimously agreed for Stacy to proceed to investigate the implementation. in order to bring to the Finance Commission, or committee, I think they should have said, and for the Board of Selectmen, for them to consider and approve. And then I think, Stacey, you've talked to, well, tell us what the status is.
Okay, so you all agreed at the last meeting to move forward with pay by phone in the short-term lots. But at that meeting, I think Kevin wanted it to go before the Board of Selectmen. He has not brought it before the Board of Selectmen. I've asked a few times and he has deferred it. And then just the last time I was CC'd on an email to you, Keith, that he wanted to not discuss it until the free parking study was done in those lots. So the only thing I would like to bring up with it is if we were to go back to paying in the lots starting September 1st, I do not know when the study is going to be. I don't think there is a downside to implementing pay by phone. There is no setup fee. There is no early termination fee. My concern is that when people have to start going to the meters to pay, they're touching the meters. There's nothing to wipe them off. There's no hand sanitizer next to them. If lines start forming, people are on top of each other. And with pay by phone, I was just trying to stay a little bit ahead of the curve because all the emails that I am getting now are saying that parking is now becoming touchless, digital. So I was trying to bring New Canaan up to speed with all of that.
Well, Stacey, we're on record as being on your side.
I know.
I
know.
Kevin, and I think
don't
Nick
understand.
Williams like the idea of having free parking in downtown New Canaan.
I mean, I guess I'm confused on our role as a commission, because if we vote on stuff, like, what right does Kevin have to basically prevent it from going on the record?
Well, remember, we basically have the power to recommend, and everything has to be validated by the Board of Selectmen.
I know, but he's not even letting it go to discussion. So he's basically preventing a commission's recommendation from going to, he's not the Board of Selectmen, he's one selectman. And he's overreaching by...
Well, perhaps, but again, I'm pretty sure that Nick Williams would vote with him, that they both are interested in experimenting with free parking downtown, and they want to see the results of the parking study. And so they don't want us to, implement something like pay by phone and then find out, oh, we're just not going to charge for parking. Now, I agree. I'd rather implement the pay by phone.
Because I don't know when. I understand he wants to.
Well, what's Robert's opinion? Robert, didn't you get this $25,000 study going? And what's the point of us discussing this if it's just going to be shut down? It's just stupid. I don't want to sit here waste my time. They were supposed to do the study in March and April before all of this happened, because that's the prime time for usage of those lots. And now they're talking about starting it again, but the usage of the lots are not back up to speed, and at least not. So yeah, I mean, the study is not going to happen
the way it was, and again, they are being utilized. I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
No, I mean, basically, Kevin's saying, here, let's wait for this study, but the study's not going to be valid for 1.5 years until actually things go back to normal. So he's being crazy with this. So I mean, what Stacey's pointing out is he's basically endangering the town in terms of having people touch things and not going. Laura, I think everyone is going contactless. Do people want to pay with cash?
Well,
Yeah,
maybe
but
we should hear from Robert.
Yeah, Robert, please comment.
I'm not really involved in the parking study, but it seems like we're trying to protect the health and safety of people, and a contactless free app makes a lot of sense that Stacey's trying to support.
So who is doing the study?
I don't know. I don't know
Robert?
the agency.
It's-
The study's being done with Kevin and I guess.
I thought he hired some.
Engaging the study.
Yeah, they have to, they
Yeah, he did.
they had signed a contract with a outside firm, you know, this is their whole purpose,
Right.
engineering
Yeah.
firm, traffic engineering.
But then everything blew up and everything stopped. And so it didn't make sense to.
Yeah, you know, in terms of the safety of things being touched, and you know, I know everyone
At
has
that point.
feelings about it, but the CDC has said this really is a disease that's not being passed by touch. It's an aerosol. It's in the air.
Right.
That's how it's getting communicated. It's you know, people are, I know, worried like crazy, but that isn't how this thing is being transmitted according to the CDC.
Well, but
But
Steve,
you also
points
see,
out that if people are
you also
waiting in line
see
to
the,
pay, then they're going to be more adjacent to each other.
Hey, listen, I'm all in favor of new technology, and I'm a huge fan of this, but I don't know what we can do
Well,
when.
can you speak to
Yeah.
Kevin about why this is a silly position and the fact that commissions thinks he's going, you know, in a wrong direction? Or are we just going to sit back and say,
I can certainly reach out to Kevin about it and say that we you know,
I mean,
talk to him
maybe
about.
I guess we can wait to read about it in the Canaanite, but
I mean, one
No, Michael's dropped off.
I've been
Yeah.
focusing on with all my projects, one of the things I've been focusing on with all my projects is customer service. And the feedback that I've gotten for people who use Boxcar is they like getting in the parking space, getting on the train, and then using their app. And it would be the same thing here as opposed to watching a train come and you're in line to.
it also, I know that a lot of employees have said they can't leave the cash register to go repay the meter, so they like to park on Main and Elm, where it's closer and they can move the car faster.
Yeah, I don't know. But let's not go, Phil. Let's circle back to pay by phone. Again, we already took an action at the last meeting unanimously. Kevin has stymied it. I'll be happy to talk to Kevin and try and resurrect it. But I don't see what we can do beyond that. Does anybody have any, you know, suggestions beyond that? I mean, and you're all welcome to reach out to Kevin yourselves, by the way.
And the only thing I can tell you again, and I checked because I know he was looking into the free parking issue. Again, they are not going to charge us a setup fee, and they're not going to charge us, yes, the contract is 3 years long if we sign it, but they're not going to charge us a termination fee. So if we were to say we're going to free parking, we no longer are using the machines, we no
Remember,
longer
You don't need to
need to
convince us.
we'll
Whether-
cancel the contract.
We're the converted. Did you have that chance to get that, what you just described to Kevin?
Well, I had, if you recall, I had sent it out to you at one point, and I thought he might have gotten it. I did not send it out to Kevin because every time I tried to reach out to Kevin about this, I don't really hear back from him. So I don't think he wants to move forward with him. So I have not sent him that information. I've been trying to.
Well, why don't
move
we,
forward with it.
again, why don't we try to resurrect this, see if we can
Sure.
get some time on Kevin's calendar and meet with him and push it? Because to me, the argument's not to take advantage, you know, the arguments are all in favor of doing it, implementing, and there seems no downside. Yes, Pamela?
Yeah, I think, Stacy, we're still gonna have to offer the machines. You said not use them at all. I still have to offer them because the people won't have
the
that.
machines are not going anywhere. No,
Right.
people will have the option.
Right.
But at least they have the
Right.
option. I mean, if you were to go to free parking and say no more machines, because that would change it.
Should we actually just then have a motion saying that we want to reiterate to him as a parking commission that we want to offer this?
We can do that. You want to make a
Probably, I'd like to move that we go back to the selectmen, not just Kevin, but maybe send it to all the selectmen, saying that we would like to offer pay by phone sooner than later. You know, as soon as we start charging again.
Yeah, or as soon as it's practical.
Right.
I'll second that motion. All in favor? Aye. All right. So,
Stacy, what's the ramp up time you would need to, because if they're saying they want to start charging in the lots on September 1st, how much
30
time do you need?
He said he can
30
do
days?
it within 30 days. He would
Okay.
push it for
Okay.
30 days. And I know we've talked about this even before COVID, that people have always asked us for this, and we as a town were kind of behind the curve, where a lot of towns have already gone forward with Park Mobile and you know, payments through an app. So I thought moving forward with this, especially at this time, would be a good time to do it.
well, we had
Yeah,
a motion.
so we need to get an answer by the end of the month, is basically.
Yeah.
It would be good, yes.
Okay, I'll make a note of that. Chris, I think you were going to tell us about electric vehicle charging stations and some information you'd gathered.
Right. Well, this is, I guess, in the same vein. So New Cannon's last in Fairfield County in terms of commercially available EV stations. I know Kevin feels that EV stations don't pay gasoline tax, so he doesn't want to encourage them. I think is, you know, right up. Anyways, I'll be quiet. But it seems like a rather foolish approach. I mean, you have an EV, I have an EV, and you know, you look at Westport, they have 37 charging stations. We have 2. Fairfield has 24. We have 2, and one of which was put up on the side of Carl Chevrolet. So it's, I mean, at this point, a charging station costs roughly $700, and you can mount them on the side of the Outback. You can mount what they call like a bollard style in a parking lot. So so it just seems pretty crazy. So at this point, Stacy was able to provide a couple things to me that I wanted to share with the group, just in terms of a data perspective that would be helpful. So one is the list of people that own EVs in town. So I don't know. What would you?
Share your screen?
Yep, I can. If will you allow me to share?
Sure. I think if I didn't already, I will. Yeah, you can share.
Okay. So can folks see this?
Yeah.
So if you look at this, what this basically does is show you that this is actually, you know, probably 6 months old at this point.
Yeah.
But you have at the top here the Bolt EVs, the Clarity, the e-Golf, the Leafs, the Priuses, and then when you get down to page, I think it's 7. You get into the BMW i8s.
Uh-huh.
So at this point, you know, there are more Teslas in town than there are BMW 3 Series. So it's
How many in total are on the list?
I haven't counted the 3 Series versus the X. This was a scan that Stacy gave me.
Okay. I think even more than our own residents, it's for visitors. You know, it's an important feature to have, you know, if we want people to eventually come back to town and attract shoppers and people going to restaurants and going to the Glass House and all that. I think it would be an important thing for that too.
Yeah. So I guess my goal would be for us to make a motion. I mean, to invest X dollars from our parking fund in X locations in the town. So what I did was I put together this sheet that basically highlights exactly what you point out, Laura, the idea of charging draws shoppers and travelers who may suffer from range anxiety, not having enough range in their car. If you don't, I mean, most of charging happens at home, as Heath and I know. Anyone else have an EV on the call today? Anyways, point being that you can get, the same mileage that you get from a typical car. But what happens is I went to Vermont last week, is 250 miles or 300 miles to our cabin up there. And so I ended up stopping in north of Albany near Lake George. And they had a charging station there. And long story short, I needed to charge for 30 minutes. And so I ended up, with my kids going to the local shop there and eating and, getting an ice cream and buying some small things. But the point is that because the charging station was there, it drew me to that location and I spent money. And so that's being right off the merit. When a person is traveling or even coming from another town, if they feel like they only have 50 miles left in their car and they're going to go to town for 2 hours, they might choose to go to Westport that has 10 times as many charging stations as we do. The other comment that was made is oh, this is going to charge the town a lot of money in terms of electricity, and so that's not really the case. So a 1 hour charging session is actually less than $2. A 70-mile range is $2.64. So if we're charging, $3 an hour on a parking spot, we're actually making a margin there that's pretty significant.
Well, we're really charging $1, right?
Well, the point is, it's not, the electricity isn't.
Yeah, it's insignificant.
It's insignificant.
I think Tiger Man told me that at one point, that it's a rounding error for the town.
Yeah, we're probably, so the proposed location is, there are a couple of things here, right? So one is, this is really a P&Z issue. So all new condos should have charging stations in them, at least a couple. Center lot should have 4. Locust lot should have 2. Town Hall should have 2. Park Street should have 2. And each of the schools should have charging stations for the teachers. Talmadge Hill should not have a charging station. Because it's
Sorry.
a lot. And then what I did in the second was I compared, here's New Canaan. This is what they call a plug share map. Can everyone see this?
Mm-hmm.
See if I can make it a little larger. But what this is, as you can tell, it's on my iPhone and it shares, okay, if I'm in my EV and I need to figure out where to find a gas station or an EV station in this case, it shows me where they are. And here is the One Morris Court, and this is the Carl Chevrolet. Steve and Leo are extremely generous, but they do have a sign there that basically says, the preference is for Chevrolets. They have a fairly tight lot as it is.
Is that a public charging station? Did the town pay for that?
No, they pay for it.
Yeah, it's theirs, right?
It's theirs.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
No, it's a worthwhile point. So then, Darien has a number, and this particular doesn't show, but this is a 6. This is I think a 10. This is a 6. This is a 10. This is at Trader Joe's, so they have quite a few in Darien. So that's 25 against our 1. Fairfield is even more pervasive. So they have 3 along the Merritt, plus they have any number of which in here. And then Westport has a similar profile, and Greenwich has another profile, and Stanford is also quite pervasive. So comparatively, even Wilton has more than we do. We should take offense to that. So, so installation costs range roughly from $500, which is effectively a cord attached to a 220 a wall mount, like Tiger was suggesting, installing them on the outback facing town hall. And then, you know, you could have a more expensive pay station that may cost $4,000 if it's, you know, independent and you have to run power to it.
Chris, the New York Times ran an article on this a couple of months ago,
What did they say, Peter?
and they said that the cost of installing a station ranged from $45,000 to $100,000. Something doesn't square here.
Well, let's go to Google. Let's go ahead and say EV charging station to help you out. And it'd be interesting if you could share that article with me. That would be interesting.
I did a couple of months ago.
Can I say
Keith, I sent it to you.
when they put the one in Morris Court, I thought the budget was like less than 10 grand for that.
That was covered by the electrical, Eversource, or whoever it was at the time.
No, understood, but I still thought that they spent less than 10 grand on that. But
That was in 2013.
Our job is not to figure out what the cost is, but to come in with numbers that are not totally preposterous to the Board of Selectmen.
Well, how is $500 preposterous if you can order a one right here for $500?
But you have to install it.
yeah, it's the cost of the electrician to install it. That's not
And
cheap.
by the way, you've got to put a bollard up.
No, you don't. You're not listening. I said you can mount it on a wall.
But where would you do that? Like at the
What?
lots like Park Street or any of those?
I said the side of the outback is a wall.
Okay,
Right.
Tiger suggested we mount 4 on the wall there.
but more
Yeah.
center, you wouldn't have a place.
No, you're right. So there's certain places where you wouldn't. So, for example, what you do is you what they call bollard stations. Like that's what it's called, the bollard. So you'd have, here's one that's $2,200, right? Okay. So I don't know where you got $45,000, but
The New York Times.
all right. So this has,
Fake news. What can I tell you?
Yeah.
just saying, I like to do my own primary research, and what you can do
There
here
it
is
is.
you add to the cart here, Peter, and what number is that?
Yeah.
That's basically 2,300.
$2,300.
Looks like I'll magnify it for folks.
No, we see it. We
That's
see
not
it.
installed.
$2,300. Yeah, an installation would be more, but even if it's twice that.
I guess my
And
point.
shipping.
Let's just go back to Laura's comment. So if you have people coming here that are transients, i.e. they don't live in town, they're coming off the Merit, and they spend $50, or they spend the $50 in Westport. So
150.
right, yeah, 150, or even let's just call it easy math. They spend $230. So if we have 10 people that come off the Merit and spend $230 in town, that pays for the unit. And then if we have 10 more, that pays for the installation. That's how economics works. So that's why we're going to pay $20 million to put a library in, because we feel like the economic benefit. We're going to make money off it. The economic benefit's there. So I guess my point is I just want us to be informed that this is what you would install. This is called what they call a tandem, because it has 2 cords, and that's why there'd be a less expensive one that would be a single cord.
So,
Okay, I
Chris,
think you're proving your point. So
yeah,
where do we go from
I
here?
think maybe you should work with Tiger and come up with a, gold, silver, bronze, option as to where we could add these, what it would cost. Tiger would have the best, way to know where you wouldn't have to dig, to pull a line up or anything like that. And then, at our next meeting or the one after, we could, vote on it and recommend to the Board of Selectmen that we should do that. It clearly makes sense, looking at the other towns. Now, Darien is skewed because so many of them on 95, in terms of downtown, but from a perspective, and I would say, hopefully when the new library gets built, they could put a couple in there as well, because it's, very being built with sustainability in mind. So, I think we should get a hard proposal and try to get it, put in front of somebody.
Robert?
Just a thought. We're talking separately about charging stations. We're reporting separately on paving parking lots. Probably a good idea. Paving parking lots. It's a good idea to get it on a table where we want some of these, because we just got through the.
You're breaking up, Robert.
At Talmadge Hill, and the last thing we want to do is recommend. Pardon?
You're cutting in and out. We couldn't really hear you.
We just got through paving Talmadge Hill. The last thing we want to now dig it up to put wiring in. It'd be a good idea for us to know where we want to recommend charging stations and build it into these projects. Even if at a minimum they put the conduit in, and then the next year we put the charging station in, but it just doesn't make sense to pave and then recommend digging up. That's just a thought.
No, I think that Locust is one. I don't think so. Locust is one that's jumps out at me there.
You're
I
right.
think you also need to look at whether you want to charge for any of them to cover the cost of putting them in. Because if you want to take them all of it out of the parking fund, then you're not going to have, especially with us not collecting parking permit fees like we were before, we're not going to have as much to spend for other things we might need, like paving or getting the police cameras that we wanted to get, and for the parking authority people and so forth. But we need to look at what the cost is relative to what our fund is and what else we might want to be doing with the fund, including part of the fund was to supposedly get more land for parking as well.
Well, I think it's within our judgment, and every financial decision you make is a choice of alternatives, right?
Right. But he was saying
No.
take them out of the parking fund, and I'm just saying you might want to also.
No. I mean, it's important to remember when we were building up the parking fund, we thought we'd be building a parking structure at the lumberyard lot.
Right.
That was kind of and before that at the Locust lot. Well, neither of those two have happened or will happen. So.
But other things are coming out of the parking fund all along.
Right, but I think this EV charging is the way of the future, and we are falling behind. I think it's really important that we, again, do it efficiently, but that's what Chris is proposing is, these places against the teen center and that new library, get them to build that into their plan and have, put in the 220, access, and also to get the word out to do this before we repave some of these lots. It's just really smart. So Chris, I don't know, do you want a motion or how do you want to proceed?
Well, I would love to team with you, Laura, if you're open to it, to kind of build a bit of the economic case around, why we think even if we choose not to charge for the electricity, as Pam suggests, that the economic benefit would pay rewards.
Yeah. Why don't I reach out to Tiger, reach out to the three of us, and we'll try to schedule a meeting and, see what he thinks, and maybe try to get back to the group before, at our next meeting with some hard numbers and location suggestions and stuff.
That sounds great. And to Robert's point, Robert, if you have intel on which lots are getting paved next, maybe we could loop you into that exchange so that we can coordinate there. So, and
yeah, Tiger will know that too.
We can certainly talk to Tiger, tell him what the thinking is.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess no particular motion. I was just
Okay.
trying to.
But I think having the Chamber of Commerce behind this is, it's just so important to the success, to have credibility with Kevin and the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't have that, they're not going to listen. And that's where we've been, right?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
yeah. Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Keith.
So let's get back to the agenda and we're actually, I think, getting pretty close to the end of the meeting, amazingly enough. So hopefully you're seeing that what we had under new matters, which was our next item, timetable for permit renewal applications. I think we discussed that quite a bit. Parking permit fees for reduced permit period. I think we discussed that. The next item was how are curbside pickups working?
I think, as I said before, I think the curbside is still working. I think the downtown seating, the plan that Tiger and Tucker and Planning and Zoning came up with to allow pedestrian access on Elm Street and allow for the restaurants, I think it's all going very, very well.
I totally agree. I think it's a huge
yeah.
success.
Yeah.
And really, I tip my cap to them for
Yeah.
coming up with that.
Yeah, no, I think it works very well.
Do you know, I'm just curious, Laura, because at one point Kevin was quoted as saying that the state was giving us problems about having the plastic barriers, plastic water-filled barriers, and they wanted us to replace them with concrete barriers.
That was only on Main Street because, as we know, that is a state road. And there was a lot of back and forth on that. And so it's really just Spiga is the only restaurant on Main Street who's doing that. Everybody else has patios. Jeff Prasad is not even, he's just staying with takeout only. So it was just that one area, and it looks like a mess over there, but whatever, it seems to appease the state for now. Then there's diversions on the sidewalks, and then someone complained about that for handicap accessible, but I haven't heard anything about it in a while, so everyone seems to be appeased for a while.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the ramps. I noticed they put the ramps in with asphalt, so
yeah.
they're thinking, as evidenced by that this is a long-term situation.
I think downtown's going to look like this until it snows, until people can't sit outside and eat anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially with the phase 3 being postponed indefinitely. There is some indoor dining at, I think, 50 or 25% capacity, but, you know, the weather's been nice and most people are happy to eat outside and feel safer to do so. So.
Is there any pressure, Laura, to open up tents at like Morris or other parking areas? I know they've done it on the main strip. I just wasn't sure if there have been any requests to do other sort of al fresco things.
No, I think the restaurants want to keep as close as possible to where they are, just for convenience for their staff. I mean, the Cherry Street is literally out in their parking lot. But other than that, you know, Soleil and Elm have creeped into space in front of stores that are currently closed. Yeah. And I think they'll have to push back a little bit once those locations reopen. But other than that, the guy at Dolce next to the Whitney shop is having a heyday. You know, they gave him some space out on the street and created, so he's, you know, quadrupled his space. But I think everyone's worked it out.
That's great.
Okay, that's a great report. So let's move on to the next item, which is how has adherence to parking laws limits gone at this, you know, the time when, and how was it working when we were just giving warnings? Stacy, your team was just not really giving tickets, just warnings and directions.
I think the warnings worked out wonderfully. I think it was a great thing to do. We got the message out there. I think the 2 weeks were plenty of time. People were realizing that we were going to go back to patrolling the streets. So most people, once they got the warning tickets, started moving their cars every 2 hours, even though we were still giving the warnings. And then once we went back to the regular patrol on the streets, everybody, the majority of people were aware. Now, occasionally we will get somebody who, got caught up in it. They weren't aware, or they had heard we were giving warnings, but they didn't know we were ticketing now. But for the most part, it went great. I haven't heard too many complaints at all. I think it's something that we should do when we start going back to patrolling the lots too. Once we just give everybody a heads up, this is what we're doing to get everybody, again, back into the flow of things. It worked out great.
Yeah, so what is your enforcement pattern now? Where are you enforcing and what are you enforcing?
So it's the majority of the downtown area: Elm, Maine, Burtis, Forest, Cherry, occasionally Vitti, Cross, patrolling for the time, Park Street, illegal parking, the loading zones, and that's basically what we're doing, and
Okay.
it's working. It's
All
working
right.
well.
Pamela?
Yeah, I had seen when I was in town a couple weeks ago that there was actually a truck parked across the crosswalk on South, across the crosswalk there at Elm, into traffic on Elm. Was there something going on or has been going on there as far as construction? Because there were two trucks back to back that were parked there, and they were parked into Elm Street across the crosswalk.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, just
No.
curious.
No. Unfortunately, we can't be there all the time.
Right.
But
No, I didn't know if there was something that was going on with one of the buildings or something that you were having
Not that
a
I'm
continuous
aware of.
problem with it or whatever.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, Stacy, do you have any input from the parking department?
No, I think we've pretty much covered everything right now. I will wait on your direction with the permits and everything else. But other than that, it's going as smoothly as it can, given the circumstances.
Yeah.
Stacy, did you lend one or two of your team over to the parks?
Actually, young Mike is working with Highway now.
Okay.
He's supposed to be there just until August 31st. Big Mike was originally with us partly and then with Parks and Rec, but I couldn't function with just Lisa.
Just one, yeah.
Yeah, so he is back with us now.
Okay, good.
So, yeah.
Okay, well, the next item was, and the last item was the reminder about the next meeting. Now, this meeting we had at 7:30, because it was posted at 7:30. That's when we gave out our annual schedule. But we certainly have time now. We could change it. Even if we call it a special meeting, it doesn't really make any difference. Is there a preference in this group to have the meetings earlier in the day or 7:30? I think, Chris, you and Laura, are working more regular hours. So is it your preference to meet at this time, 7:30?
I could do earlier. I could do 6 or 6:30. Doesn't have to be this late.
Okay, what about you, Laura?
It makes no difference to me.
I would find 6:30 to be a problem.
Too early? Okay, so you prefer
Too
7:30?
early.
Okay, so you prefer 7:30.
Yes.
Pam?
I actually prefer even earlier, but that's,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in that camp too. I prefer like
I'd rather do like
5 or 4.
5:30 or something like that.
Right.
And get it over with so we can go on to the evening. Our
But
family functions at a later hour around here, so I'm taking away from all my family time, but that's come here and there.
what
But
I'm
with
hearing
people
is
being
that-
home, for the most part, working from home and so forth, and if they're finishing up work around 5:30, the thought was maybe we could meet earlier and not be as late.
but Peter, for you, it works better at this hour or 7 or something?
I work during the day. And so I don't stop working until 5:30 or 6.
Yeah.
So the idea of starting a meeting at 5:30 or 6 is a real problem.
Yeah, okay. Well, we posted 7:30, and so unless there's some general movement to change it, I think we should stay with it, because then we're unencumbered by the special meeting rules. So unless I hear from you between now and the next month, we have plenty of time, but I'm gonna leave it at 7:30. Okay, so let's go around. Does anybody have anything else they want to bring up? Otherwise, I'm gonna move we adjourn. May I have a second? Okay, thank you, Pam, and all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it is now 8:55.
Thanks,
All
everyone.
right, thank you all. I'm going to shut this down so we don't do anything that gets recorded, because we have been recorded.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.